From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world's time zones, each and every one covered like a blanket by this program, Coast to Coast AM. I'm Art Bell. It's my honor and privilege to be escorting you through the weekend. Coming up next hour, Tom Horn will be here. He'll be talking about Stargates. What an interesting topic, huh? So we've got that ahead, and, of course, unscreened open lines for the remainder of this hour, the bigger part of it anyway. Looking at the world news, bombings kill 7 U.S. soldiers in Iraq. Every world newscast, every U.S. newscast, leads with this story every time, or one just like it. Bombings killed 7 U.S. soldiers in Baghdad and a southern city, according to the U.S. military on Sunday, and the country's Sunni vice president spoke out against a proposed oil law clouding the future of a key benchmark for assuring continued U.S. support for the government. 6 of the soldiers were killed Saturday in a bombing in western Baghdad. According to the military in a statement, their interpreter also killed. Now, that's interesting. That's really interesting. Sunni vice president spoke out against a proposed oil law clouding the future of a key benchmark for assuring continued U.S. support for the government. A sniper sprayed dozens of bullets on a courthouse, another head shaker, killing a police officer, wounding a sheriff's deputy and a civilian, then apparently killed a caretaker, then himself Sunday in a nearby church. According to police, the investigators say they believe the shooter deliberately fired into an emergency dispatch center inside the county courthouse late Saturday, all this in Moscow, Idaho, to lure people into the line of fire. The officer was killed as he rushed to the courthouse. The deputy helped pull out the officer on the way before being shot. God, these shootings, people who decide they're going to take themselves out, as many of their fellow citizens as they can, is just indecipherable for me. Israel's Air Force fired a missile at a house in Gaza City late Sunday, killing at least 8 people. Residents and hospital officials said the strike followed a decision to step up attacks against Islamic militants in response to rocket fire from Gaza. Israeli air attacks on militant targets earlier in the day killed another 3 Palestinians. The attack on the house was the deadliest airstrike since Israel began reprisals on Tuesday for rocket barrages. Iran urged Arab countries on Sunday to support their nuclear program, but they received a rather cool reception at the World Economic Forum, particularly from U.S. allies worried about Iran's growing regional influence. Iranian officials said separately the nuclear program was moving ahead as scheduled and that the country would not suspend uranium enrichment despite the threat of a third set of UN sanctions. Gee, those really work, huh? This is kind of a sad story. Route 66 motels an endangered species. The Riviera Courts Motel is crumbling away, and nobody seems to care anymore. Once a stop along incredible Route 66, the 2,400-mile neon carnival that connected hundreds of communities from Chicago to L.A., this late 1930s Mission revival is just a weather-worn building on the side of a country road now in far northeast Oklahoma. Next door, soybean farmers Richard and Rosemary Woolard watch the place deteriorate from their front porch. When I was young, well, of course, there was a TV show called Route 66. You remember that? And I hitchhiked that road, several times, and I guess it's just about gone. And the artifacts that littered Route 66 just about gone also. Kind of sad in a way. To be replaced now by big, unscenery-like 4, or is it 6 or 8 lane interstates that zoom you across the country at light speed or just under. I'll miss Route 66. How about the rest of you? Anyway, in a moment, we'll look at some of the rest of the news. Researchers have begun tracking a huge dust plume they believe might affect clouds and weather across thousands of miles while playing a role in global warming as well. Scientists are using high-tech aircraft to study plumes of airborne dust and pollutants that originate in Asia and then make the journey to North America. I've seen it myself here. The plumes are among the largest such events on Earth. The first mission will be launched in late April when these weather patterns begin in Asia, and the study will continue for about 2 months. While many particles in the plumes, such as sulfates, cool the planet by blocking solar radiation from reaching Earth, other particles, such as black carbon, can have a warming effect. Warming in the coming decades will strongly be influenced by how many particle emissions change, particularly in Asia. I remember waking up one day here in the desert, and there was a kind of an orangey tint to the atmosphere. It was very hazy. And this went on for days. And the weathermen were asked questions. The local weathermen were scratching their heads about what it could possibly be. Turned out it came from Mongolia, a dust storm in Mongolia that had crossed all the way over and was just polluting our atmosphere. It is a small world. Beyond the security checkpoint at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration's Ames Research Center at the southern end of San Francisco Bay, a small group gathered in November for a conference on the topic of managing solar radiation. The real subject was much bigger: how to save the planet from the effects of global warming. There was very little talk among the 24 scientists and other specialists about carbon taxes, alternative energy, or the usual remedies suggested. Many of the scientists were impatient with such schemes. Some were simply calling for international cooperation and policies and lifestyle changes needed to curb greenhouse gas emissions. Others had concluded the world's politicians and bureaucrats aren't up to the job. And so they believe it's time now to consider radical measures, perhaps a technological quick fix for global warming. Mitigation is not what's happening. It's not going to happen, according to physicist Lowell Wood, who declared at the NASA conference, actually he was a star there, I guess, where he served as one of the Pentagon's chief weapons designers and threat analysts. He reportedly enjoys the Dr. Evil nickname bestowed by his critics. The time has come, he said, for an intelligent elimination of undesired heat from the biosphere by technical ways and means, which he asserted could be achieved for a tiny fraction of the cost of the bureaucratic suppression of CO2. His engineering approach, he boasted, would provide instant climate gratification. He'd be an interesting guy to interview, would advance several ideas to fix the Earth's climate, including building up Arctic sea ice to make it function like a planetary air conditioner to, in effect, suck heat in from the mid-latitude heat bath. A surprisingly practical way of achieving this, he said, would be to use large artillery pieces to shoot as much as 1 million tons of highly reflective sulfate aerosols, or specifically engineered nanoparticles, into the Arctic stratosphere to deflect the sun's rays. Delivering up to 1 million tons of material via artillery would require a constant bombardment, basically declaring war on the stratosphere. Alternatively, a fleet of B-747 crop dusters could deliver the particles by flying continuously around the Arctic Circle, or a 25-kilometer-long sky hose could be tethered to a military super blimp high above the planet's surface to pump reflective particles into the atmosphere. Now, I'm not saying that these are good ideas, but I sure would like to hear more about them. So if we can get Mr. Wood or anybody else who thinks these ideas are practical and actually will work, I want to interview him. It is not just a TV show. This from Whitley Strieber's Unknown Country. It's true. Psychics really do help the police solve crimes. In newsmonster.com, Danny Penman writes, quote, "The Daily Mail has learned that the police are increasingly turning to psychics and mediums for help in their battle against crime. Sources in the National Criminal Intelligence Service say that officers turn to mediums to help them solve the more difficult cases. There's even a database containing the names of official psychics that officers can tap into 24 hours a day. I wonder if they have to call a 900 number. Just a joke. Reports from Canada are coming in as usual, but in one province, UFO sightings are way up for this time of the year. A massive 73 written sightings, a number of telephone interviews, places the total for Ontario to a whopping 81 cases as of May 15th, 2007, to come into UFO Research, which is located in Houston, British Columbia, and UFO Info, located in the United Kingdom. A large number of UFO reports came in during the months of January and February, but it was in March when a flurry of fireball sightings were reported. Then an unexpected huge number of cases were received directly after the fireball meteor event. Witnesses are still writing up and sending in some amazing cases, such as the recent triangular UFO sighting, which took place in Ottawa, Ontario, where multicolored lights were moving around in all directions. And if that wasn't enough of an amazing event, it flew a massive triangular craft witnessed by 3 people who drew up an excellent diagram of the thing. In a collision of 21st century science and decades-old conspiracy theories, a research team that includes a former top FBI scientist is challenging the bullet analysis used by the government to conclude that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in assassinating President John F. Kennedy in 1963. The evidence used to rule out a second assassin is fundamentally flawed. The conclusion of a new article, The Annals of Applied Statistics, written by former FBI lab metallurgist William A. Tobin and Texas A&M University researchers Cliff Spiegelman and William James. The researchers' reanalysis involved new statistical calculations and a modern chemical analysis of bullets from the same batch that Oswald is purported to have used. They reached no conclusion, about whether more than one gunman was involved, but they did urge that authorities conduct a new and complete forensic reanalysis of the 5 bullet fragments left from the assassination 44 years ago. We'll see. Well, listen, everybody, I'd just love to talk to you, so here's the way we get it done. You enter in through one of the following portals. West of the Rockies, listen carefully, 800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 800-825-5033. Unscreened open lines, that means turn your radio off the instant I tell you you're on the air. First-time callers, area code 818-501-4721. Wildcard line callers, we have quite a few of those, area code 818-501-4109. And if you're outside the country, we can accommodate you at 800-893-0903. Just get hold of your operator and tell her you want to dial that toll-free international number, 800-893-0903. All right, let's go west of the Rockies and say, hello, you're on the air. Hello?
Yeah, this is Steve calling from Reno.
Yes, Steve, hi.
Boy, I finally got through. I don't know how many times I've been trying to get a hold of you. It's always busy, Signal.
Well, here you are.
Yeah, I got a question. You interviewed Bob Bigelow several weeks ago.
That's right.
But I didn't hear anything mentioned about his America's X Prize, for the $50 million.
I'm not sure where he is in that race, if he wants to be in that race or anything else. So,
well, he was offering something himself, from what I'd heard. That
no, I don't think so. He's wrapping most of his money into his space effort, which is totally non-trivial. I think that's absorbing most of his funds right now. So I'm not aware that he's offering a prize nor in a race for one.
Well, not a race per se, but from what I understood, he was, like the Ansari X Prize. It was everywhere around the world people could enter. Mr. Bigelow was wanting to do something just, domestic.
I think he would like to see a prize offered, but I don't believe he's offering one.
I thought, because I could have sworn last year or something he was offering something, for an actual orbital flight.
No, sir, not that I'm aware of.
Sure. You're talking about the global warming and stuff. I remember a few weeks ago I saw on the History Channel they talk about in the Corn Belt where they grow all that corn, and they had a little blurb saying that 4,000 gallons of water is transpired from every acre of corn. Out there in the Ogallala Aquifer, which pretty much is probably going to suck that dry. And that's what I'm figuring is causing most of the global warming there, because water vapor is a big greenhouse gas. And of course, even when it rains in the Midwest, it doesn't replenish everything that we pull out. And they were talking about carbon dioxide. Well, carbon dioxide is heavier than the atmosphere, so it's going to stay pretty much,
Well, they're claiming carbon dioxide is the main problem that we have, and I will continue to have experts on, but I don't think there's a whole lot of debate about it anymore. I think that most mainstream scientists are getting behind the concept that what we're putting into the atmosphere is doing what we're beginning to observe here on the ground and in the air around us. I think that argument is pretty much closing off. Wildcard Line, you're on the air.
Hello, Art.
Hi. Where are you calling from, sir? Hello?
Hello, is this Art?
That's me.
Hi, Art. My name is Mike. I'm from Evansville. You were talking about the FBI analysis of the lead in the bullets.
That's right.
Earlier?
Yes.
Yeah, that's actually been debunked several times, that the lead batch analysis is different from batch to batch. They can do some other cool things with checking the small marks made on a bullet or a shell casing that are ejected or fired from a gun.
Right.
To do that, they need the original firearm. That science has been debunked several times, and
Okay.
there are some experts that do testify on behalf of defendants from time to time. I don't remember the name of the organization that has done that research, but it is very conclusive that, just because a bullet came from batch A1, it doesn't mean it couldn't have come from batch C2.
I hear you. Yeah, I'm far from an expert on that. And I think long after you and I are long gone, sir, they're going to still be debating that assassination.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Thank you.
I certainly appreciate the call, though. Anything else?
That's all I had to add.
All right. Thank you very much for the call, and take care. Yeah, that's going to go on forever. A few weeks ago, I thought it might be kind of interesting, and I renew that interest right now in sort of making a top 10 conspiracy list of all time. Where would you think the Kennedy assassination now would rate? Where do you think 9/11 would rate as compared to that? Anybody doing any research there? International line, you're on the air. Hi.
Hello?
Hello, turn your radio off, please, and tell me where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Toronto, Canada.
Toronto. Okay, sir, not a lot of time before the break. What's up?
I just wanted to let you know that I was camping about 3 months ago up near Orillia, Ontario.
Yes, sir.
And we saw Sasquatch.
Sasquatch?
Yes.
Close up?
We saw Bigfoot.
Yeah, I've got that. Close up?
Oh, yes. Pretty close up. We walked up on him by surprise.
Here, I thought you were going to tell me about a UFO sighting or something, and you're telling me you saw Sasquatch. Any photographs?
No photographs.
Oh, gee.
Just too quick. Once he heard us coming up on him,
yes,
he was just gone like a flash of light.
Well, will you say we? You and who else?
My two sons, Jonathan and Jordan.
Really? And their ages?
17 and 14.
17 and 14. And so all three of you saw this?
Yeah, Sasquatch. It was amazing. He was about, I swear, 8 feet tall.
Uh-huh.
Dark reddish, brownish hair, long nails. But we just saw that like for about 5 seconds, and then it was like he had wings.
Like he had wings, meaning he virtually disappeared?
Yeah, within,
Like he had wings, or he actually flew away?
It was like in a blink of an eye. Not literally flew, but I mean
Got it.
He was
disappeared. All right. Well, there are many people who think that Sasquatch has a paranormal aspect to it. That this animal, whatever it is, does have some sort of paranormal, and that's the only way you can explain what, for example, that gentleman just said, that he was there 1 second and virtually disappeared the next second. So it's possible, perhaps he came through some sort of Stargate. We'll be talking about that tonight. Good morning, I'm Art Bell. Here I am. I want to remind everybody that tentatively Aaron is going to give birth to Asia Rain Bell June 1st, probably about noon or noon 30, something like that, 12 or 12:30 in the afternoon. Now, that's the plan. But God, I guess, has his own way. In fact, Paul in Marina, California, reminds me Carl Sandburg said, a baby is God's opinion that the world should go on. And I guess I kind of look at it that way, too. You have a lot of ups and downs in life. Some of us, very severe ups and downs, and all you can do when you get down is look and think and proceed forward as best you can. There's one other option, but it's not a really good one, so life must go on. And I agree with Mr. Sandberg. A baby is God's opinion. The world should go on, and so be it. We'll be right back. Remember, when I answer the phone, tell you you're on the air, reach over and turn that radio off right away. Let's go east of the Rockies, and I'll say you're on the air.
Hey, Art. This is Tony.
Hello, Tony.
Yes, I'm from Galax, Virginia. I called you last week. My battery went dead.
I see.
Yeah. I was wanting to call you tonight to ask you if you know anything about the Save Internet Radio bill.
Save Internet Radio?
Yes.
Well, I know that Internet radio is having a lot of trouble with, various taxes and fees that people are trying to levy on it for content.
That's cat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know. It's the same reason, sir, that a lot of radio stations choose not to stream on the web, because they make these crazy assumptions about how many people are listening, and then BMI and ASCAP and all the rest of them just levy a gigantic payment on them that can't be supported.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I'm kind of in that business. My business, we have to pay ASCAP fees because we play live music at our shop that we own.
Sure.
But the reason I was asking is I know a lot of your listeners, like I, listen to your show through the internet, and I also listen to WRVA out of Roanoke,
right,
on the internet.
The only way this is going to get settled, sir, is when they come up with a realistic way of measuring what the actual audience is for any given internet stream.
Yeah. Well, I just wonder, because they're going to pass a bill. They're trying to pass a bill to either stop it or not stop it. June 15th. I would encourage your listeners to call their congressman to say, please save internet radio.
Well, one thing you can do is internet talk. You're not going to get levied for that. So why not consider doing talk on the internet? They're not going to send you a bill for that.
Yeah. I mean, half of what I listen to is talk anyway, but...
well, it's a lot more interesting. I've said this before. Music radio is fine. I have no argument with music. I dearly love it. All my early years in radio were in music radio. But I guess I outgrew it. Not the love of music. I still dearly love music, but not as a constant diet. We've talked about this. Traveling out across the country, you can tap your feet to the beat only so long, and after a while it becomes more of a sleep inducer than it does keeping you awake. Talk radio, on the other hand, engages the mind in a story. And so you sit there sort of waiting for the next chapter. Your brain is engaged and you're awake, and that's good when you're behind the wheel. Wildcard Line, you're on the air. Hi.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Yeah,
Turn your radio off, please.
I want to know if the Earth's getting bigger because all these trees can grow and everything.
You want to know if the Earth is getting bigger?
Yeah, because of over 1,000 years, all these trees grow, and we're cutting them down, and they keep putting it in. I want to know if the Earth is getting bigger.
I don't think so.
Why don't you think so? We got people dying, burying them in the ground. We got trees growing.
Uh-huh.
So the Earth got to be getting bigger.
Well, you know that part of the burial thing where they say dust to dust?
Yeah, I know. I got my father in my back seat. He's in a little bitty box, but that's
Okay. Well, there you go. In other words, dust to dust. That which is created on the earth goes back to it. So, no, I don't think that because we're burying people and because trees are growing and or whatever, that the earth is actually getting bigger. Although some scientists, I'm sure, will come along and prove me wrong somehow or another. But pretty much the same size. Satellites, I think, verify that on a fairly regular basis. West of the Rockies, you are on the air.
Hello, Art Bell.
Hi.
I have wanted to talk to you for a long time. I want to make 3 comments. Number 1, I wish you were on every night.
Thank you.
Okay, but you're much superior to him.
Well, look, we just we all have different styles. And number 2?
I wanted to ask you, a few months ago you had a caller on that purported to be abducted by aliens any number of times. In fact, you were so interested in him that you even kept him on like an extra hour.
Oh, yes.
You claimed to have somebody that could positively back that up. Did you ever talk to that person?
No, I've not talked to the person who can back it up, but I'm sure in a future interview, I believe I requested that, so we'll do it.
I would like to hear that. And then number 3, I want to say that global warming, that they've proven that the increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is a precursor to a new ice age.
Oh, well.
And they've pretty much proven that now that they can. That's solid science.
Uh-huh. That's solid science. So you think there's a new ice age coming?
I think that there at least a mini ice age, yes.
Uh-huh. And where are you located again?
Right now I'm in Barstow, California. I'm a trucker.
Barstow.
Yeah.
Barstow happens to be one of the hottest places on Earth.
I don't know. I just came from Las Vegas. That was one of the hottest places on Earth.
It absolutely is. So what do you think another 10 degrees would do to Vegas in the summer?
Make it a lot more uncomfortable.
It sure would.
10 degrees would be unsustainable. I mean, if the Earth's temperature does rise, it's only going to be 2 or 3 degrees. Uh-huh. But that would be enough to do significant damage to crops worldwide. And,
it sure would. And I think that's the direction we're headed. I don't think the old theory 2 or 3 decades ago was that we were about to go into another ice age. They've simply revised that, and I think with solid scientific evidence have proven that, indeed, we're in the middle instead of global warming. Now, that may be attaching itself to a natural cycle of some sort or another. I can't deny that because I can't prove it one way or the other. But I think clearly we're on the rise. First-time caller line, you're on the air. Hello. Hello?
Yes.
Going once.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Thank you for turning off your radio. And what is your first name and where are you?
My name's John, and I'm in Victorville.
Victorville. Gee, near, not all that far from Barstow. Okay.
Yeah. I was wondering if you heard about the plains out up in towards Helendale, up in the desert area up there. I've worked up there a lot, and I've seen graveyard shift, and I've seen planes that come up, and then all of a sudden they disappear, and then the next thing you know, they're flying out again. And
well, the answer is yes. I mean, this whole area, this whole desert area, sir, is infested with all kinds of secret stuff. So, if you sit out here, if you're, as you are, probably a driver through the night sky in this area, you're going to see a lot of weird things, a lot of unidentifiable things. Now, some of them probably are secret military craft being tested. Just over the hill from me is the infamous Area 51. So we see a lot of things in the sky out here that are unusual. Every now and then you're treated, or maybe that's the wrong word. Every now and then you get to see something close up and really personal, and that's the kind of thing you don't forget for the rest of your life. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Hi.
Yes.
Hi. What is your first name, please?
Andrew.
Andrew, welcome. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah.
Proceed.
Let me tell you the solution to all the problems.
All problems?
Right, all the world's problems.
Pretty big reach, but go ahead.
Stop humans from reproducing.
Actually, not bad, Andrew. I suppose if we stopped reproducing, or at least at the rate we're currently reproducing, it would solve an awful lot of problems, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, if you look at higher social organisms, they tend to either consume their entire environment or self-destruct. And eventually humans will stop existing and the world will be a better place.
Well, I don't know about the world being a better place. That's subjective if we're not here to participate in it. But I do agree with you, actually, that the rate of increase, the number of people in the world, there's just too many of us. And that all these problems, or many, he said all, I don't know about all, but many of these problems that we're currently experiencing would be not so severe or not apparent at all if the population of the world was, let us say, half of what it is now, or even a quarter of what it is now. So I can't disagree with that. Wildcard line, you're on the air.
Art, how you doing, buddy?
I'm well, sir.
I'm questioning you as to whether or not you ever followed up on the Bones dilemma. I'm sorry, not Bones, it was Bugs, the guy who...
Bugs. Yes. We did a show that included Bugs, not more than, a couple of months ago at the most. And I've not received any contact from anybody who wanted to make Bugs a deal. There was a gentleman, as you recall, if you heard that latest show, who was actually, I think it's my observation, that he was shaken up severely by the fact that Bugs was on the show and described what he did. I thought the fellow was going to have a heart attack.
Yes, he got quite emotional, and I thought that for a Bigfoot
researcher,
that he would have been more excited in trying to get with the guy and go dig up the bones and find make the big find of the century.
Yes, but the tact that my guest was taking was sort of a protective kind of lecture about Bigfoot, and hearing what he heard was, I don't know, it was the equivalent of somebody who picks up garbage along a highway, hearing about somebody who just dumped a 747 load of junk on the highway. He was pretty shaken, so I didn't really expect to hear from him, and I did not.
Okay. Well, thank you, Art. You got a great show. Keep it up.
You're very welcome. Take care. Let's jump to, east of the Rockies. You're on the air. Good morning.
Yeah, Art.
Yes.
I have a couple of things you might be interested in.
Sure.
I am the child of older parents, and
yes.
I had a C-section.
And you've just had a C-section?
I had one. She's 21 years old, but I was the child of older parents.
Yes.
I grew up with my dad was almost 70 when I graduated from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And had an emergency C-section 21 years ago, and I did fine. It was scary, so you are very much better off having it scheduled.
Well, Erin is only 4 feet 8 inches tall. So early on in the pregnancy, when her OBGYN doctor, who, by the way, was Ramona's doctor and offered to be the doctor for Erin as well, he took a look at her and said, why don't we do a C-section? And, it was pretty obvious. She's a little girl, and my goodness, her tummy's pretty good size now, right now.
I want
at the moment.
to know that she will do fine.
Yeah.
She will breeze through it. I was so scared. And it would have been better if they would have scheduled me.
Now, you would have known what to expect.
Right, and the pain really wasn't as bad as I had heard. You hear stories. Tell her not to listen to anything or anyone.
I would think the pain of going through full labor, particularly with a first child, would be somewhat more daunting than a C-section.
The C-section, I had a good husband. I was well taken care of afterwards, and Erin will be too, I know.
Oh, yes.
She'll do fine.
Okay, well, thank you so very much. We're, I guess like any parent, I'm very nervous, and Erin's nervous, but I think all will be well. As a matter of fact, she's at the stage of her pregnancy now where we're going to the doctor every week. And during the 9th month, that's what you do. So we've got to be up fairly early in the morning to yet have another go-see. But so far, so good. Nothing wrong at all. It's been, other than getting kicked frequently, in the 9th month, they're pretty active. And I know where the foot is. I know where the butt is. I know where the head is. It's sometimes kind of unusual. I mean, you look at the tummy and you can see it shift around, kind of like a scene out of Alien or something. But it's way cool. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Hi. Hello?
This is Alex.
Hi, Alex.
I have a sort of invention type thing that I've been trying to get off the ground. It's sort of believe it or not, it makes energy from practically nothing.
Mm-hmm. Without giving away your secret completely, give us some idea of how it does what it does.
Magnetic repulsion.
Magnetic repulsion. Okay, it's an interesting concept. And what is it you need? Money, no doubt, right?
No, do you know anybody that could help me get in touch with custom-made magnets? Because they need to be made a certain way, a certain shape for it to work.
Not offhand, but no, not offhand. Being honest with you, I really don't. I don't know who that would be. Now, the answer is no. I really don't.
Wow. I can't believe I actually got through.
Well, you actually have. If you really have got something, then all I can tell you is like with any other dream, drill away at it. Don't give up. If you really think that you've got something, charge ahead. You'll find somebody.
Okay.
All right, take care. That's the only way you ever get anywhere in life is just plow ahead. You've just got to keep going. And if you have a dream, if you have something you want to do, don't give up. If you truly believe in it, it can happen. East of the Rockies, once again, you're on the air. Hi.
Hello, Art.
Hi.
Hi, this is Sue from Fayetteville, North Carolina. How are you?
That's my birth state. Just fine.
I know it is. I've been through there. I think they should put a historical sign up.
Oh, please.
I want to know if you've been to see David Copperfield.
No, I never did make it.
He found the Fountain of Youth, he thinks. I think you've been in it. You look great.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I did put my picture about 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so before airtime, maybe 20.
Right, I saw it, and you look very good. You look 30 years younger.
Well, thank you. I hope I'm doing okay. It seems like I'm doing okay. My back, which is the only real health problem that I've had, my back is, for some reason, quite a bit better. I lost some weight. That helped. So, thank you.
That's great. Well, good luck with the baby, and Erin is just beautiful, and I think you're so lucky. I think she's so lucky, and I just wish you all the best.
Luckier than you can ever know. Thank you. People are rarely given an opportunity to find true love twice in their lifetime. And I was given that opportunity at a moment when I thought that the entire universe had collapsed upon me shortly thereafter, and I'm very thankful for it. All right, it would be unfair to pick up another phone call before the top of the hour. Coming up at the top of the hour, but a little past the top of the hour, is Tom Horn, and he's going to be talking about stargates. And I think, without giving away the farm here, that he believes there are stargates in the Middle East. So we'll find out about that. I hope there are. Frankly, I hope there are stargates. Entryways to and from perhaps another universe, another dimension. We'll be talking about all of that and much more. when we get back, what I would like to ask you, think about this during the break, Tom. Do you believe that some of this research, wilder research than you just quoted, is going on, perhaps in underground bunkers or underground labs, that the public hasn't heard a thing about? Your answer in a moment. Hold the interesting thing, Tom. We're at a break point. We've got to do it right here. Tom Horn is my guest. Stargates, human beings that are mixed with something else. This should be quite a program. I'm Art Bell. You know, I'm probably not as deeply a religious person as I could be, but I do have certain core beliefs that, sustain me. And one of them absolutely says to me that when we start combining human beings, and let us say wolves or any other species, and start turning them out for, purposes of warfare or enhancing human ability to be able to fight the better fight, then we've crossed a line from which we will not come back. And I could be all wrong about this. Maybe I'm just stodgy and getting old, but that one seems pretty clear to me. Tom Horn will be back in just a moment. Well, all right, welcome back, Tom. There's something about this that really raises the hair on the back of my neck when I hear about it. Part human, part wolf, part human, part anything, in order to achieve some edge in warfare or for whatever the reason. It just goes against everything I think I believe in. I've done interviews that would seem to prove that, Tom. We're at a break point. Hold tight. Tom Horn is my guest, and we'll be right back. I'm right here, and my guest is Tom Horn, talking about some pretty far-out stuff. Stargates, transgenics, part human and part, something else. That and more when we come back. Well, all right, Tom, welcome back. I'm trying to make sense of all this as Tom Horn is here talking about human modification, human and animal combinations, and going from the ancient times to what we're doing today. And he's also talking about stargates, the ability of, would it be fallen gods, to move through, and perhaps the manipulation of all this by what we call UFOs. Here I am. Tom Horn is my guest. We're going to try and pin him down coming up in a moment about what these things are, these things that thousands, perhaps millions of us see in our skies and are inhabited by who knows what kind of creatures. Perhaps Tom knows. That question for him in a moment. Certainly I have interviewed many, many abductees in my time, and those who do research on abductions, Tom. The beings who are doing these abductions, the creatures in these vehicles, not all of which obviously are from elsewhere, do you believe that these beings are extraterrestrials, in other words, from another planet somewhere, or do you believe that these beings are, I guess, what you would call angels?
Well, I don't know. What I can tell you, Art, is that this has touched my family in profound ways. In what way? Well, I mean, when I was a child, my dad was a police officer. He also worked with the FBI in Arizona. And there was a series of events. First of all, he discovered some large circular holes in the Arizona desert. This was reported by the Arizona Gazette. Back when it happened, the story was called Mysterious Mountain Holes. They went out and took pictures of him because he had been out there deer hunting when he found these things. They took pictures of him with his 30-06. And these things were huge. They were perfectly spherical, 20 feet across maybe, 8 or 10 feet deep. And Dad, as a police officer, had taken the Army Corps of Engineers out there. They couldn't determine how they were made. Dad had grown up in the area working for the Bard Ranch, and he talked to the local Indians that lived in the area. They didn't even know they were there, so Dad assumed that these things had appeared almost overnight. Because they couldn't determine how they were made, eventually the Corps of Engineers filled them full of rock because the deer and stuff were falling in them. They were full of water. They were perfectly cylindrical. In fact, if people listening to this show go to officialdisclosure.com, they can see pictures. They can see a picture of them. And Dad just described them as it looking like a white hot ball had just pushed down into the earth. He didn't know how they were made, and he was ex-military. That story eventually tapered off because nobody could explain it. Then on November 5, 1975, along the northeastern ridge of that Arizona mountain range, Travis Walton stepped out of his pickup, looked up at what he called a glowing object, and everybody knows his story, fire in the sky.
Oh, yes, I interviewed Travis a number of times, along with his coworkers. It's a very believable abduction story.
I think it is believable. I mean, I don't know Travis. I've never met him, but I've talked to Stanton Friedman. Friedman knows him, and he believes his story's true. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether his story was connected at all with what my dad had discovered. My dad worked for Del E. Webb for a long time. Dad was connected on both sides of the law, if you know what I mean. And what I do know, though, is that after his original discovery, and this happened, and you have to keep in mind, here we are, a very conservative family. I mean, there was nothing about aliens or anything that really, there was even no classical definitions of it back then. And my aunt, who lived just down the road from us right after Dad made that discovery, comes up to our house, face ashen white, telling my mother that she had seen some large circular thing hovering above our house. And Mom went outside and didn't see anything. It was just a few days after that, and I remember this night vividly, that I was asleep maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden my sister, my older sister, began screaming in a way that you never want to hear a human scream. And I jumped up, as well as did everybody else in the household. We ran into her room, and she was sitting up in bed with her eyes like silver dollars. My dad immediately made me and my brother go back to our room, and it wasn't until years later. In fact, I was pastoring before I knew what that story was about. And my mother told me that my sister had woke up in the middle of the night, heard kind of a clicking sound, and felt something touch her feet. And she woke up, and there was light coming in from the bathroom, because we always left the light on in the bathroom. And here are these three small, bulbous-headed beings that today you would classify them as your typical alien grays. But back then there wasn't any description of them. And they were next to her bed, and they were whispering something, or they were talking in a really low voice. It wasn't English. She didn't have no idea what they were saying, but it just terrified her. And she was looking at him, trying to figure out whether she was asleep, having a nightmare, or whether this was really happening, but her senses told her it was really happening. And these things seemed to have an interest in her feet and her legs, and so they were touching her feet and her legs, and then one of them walked up and laid its hand on her head, and when it did, she started screaming. Now, Art, that experience didn't stop there. It continues. And what you have to understand is that this was simply not something that could be adaptable to our worldview.
Of course not.
And
so how did you adapt to it? I mean, obviously it launched you into the line of inquiry that you're doing right now, which would be regarded by many Christians as having way crossed the line. But I guess you got pushed across the line.
Well, I'm not as concerned about what people think about me as I am in knowing what the truth is.
Right.
Because this doesn't affect my personal devotion. But I know my...
Well, it conceivably could, Tom.
Well, it doesn't, because I've grown to the point that I can, this is a reason why I'm very comfortable with interviewing and discoursing with a lot of people that buy into what happened at Roswell and things like that, because I believe that there is something that doesn't necessarily fit the old models. This whole question about how would people of faith be affected if suddenly they were faced with reality that we're not the sole higher intelligence in the universe? And in the last even the last year, there have been different astronomers for the Vatican that have released a series of treatises in which they've been saying, in fact, Guy Cosmonalgo, his Intelligent Life in the Universe was published by a Vatican-owned publishing house, Truth Society, last year. And he says that, we're now facing a greater than not possibility of extraterrestrial contact.
Okay, well, I think that the religious community probably could accept and rationalize extraterrestrial contact. There could be life out there, certainly. But when you take another step and you start talking about these beings as perhaps not being extraterrestrial, but as being, I don't know, perhaps extra-dimensional, let's go with that, just to put a label on it, and that perhaps they are our progenitors. Perhaps they created us. Perhaps at some point in human evolution, a point that you talked about earlier, where all of a sudden we seem to have civilization, where they stepped in and created what we are now, Tom.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That was before we went to the break, and I mentioned Eric von Däniken. I think the whole idea of this ancient astronaut theory, the Elohim, I think this is something that people of faith are going to accept at different levels. They're not going to accept necessarily the whole idea that there was some super intelligence that came down and created us, and that this is the origins of the Genesis story, because they still have this question about, okay, but then where did they come from? But what I am saying is, I think that it, for me and for people like me, we can understand that there is something that's certainly happening beyond the natural models that we were given 25, 30 years ago. And I know it in my family. If I had time to tell you the situation with my sister, her husband being employed where he was, at Los Alamos, and his mysterious death, and then from her to her daughter, which makes it generational, and her daughter being a federal employee of the Social Security Division, and her experiences being identical to my sister's, and her going to the head psych doctor for the Social Security Division, and him telling her, absolutely, this is real, and we're aware of it. And from that, Steven Spielberg.
Meaning the whole abduction scenario?
Yes. Yes. And Steven Spielberg's people pick her out of a crowd in Seattle, Washington, when they were promoting their Taken television series, saying, come with us, you've been chosen. I'm telling you that we don't have time to talk about this tonight, but the mathematical probabilities of what has happened between my sister and then her niece and now her daughter, 3 generations. In fact, what might even be the very first picture of an alien gray that appeared on a computer screen standing behind my niece. That's also over there at officialdisclosure.com. And it's been, by the way, that picture has been analyzed by a guy who does photo analysis for the military. It's also been analyzed by a police officer who does an analysis for the police department, and several other people who are just good at what they do. And so this story goes pretty deep, and the bottom line is, Art, something touched my family, and it put me on this quest to try to both understand it and also to be able to reconcile it with my worldview and to be comfortable with that analysis.
Well, yeah, that's quite a job.
Well, it is quite a job, but I think for myself, within myself, I have an understanding of what all of this means. I also have a lot of friends, though, on various sides of the fence, and I'm not a rigid kind of person. I believe what I believe, but I also have appreciation for people who see things differently than I do. And but the so I look at the bigger picture, and to me, the bigger picture is something has been going on for some time. By the way, and you just tell me to shut up if you don't want me to even bring this up. But all of this is interesting to me, given what you asked Malachi Martin back in '97. And Martin placed a 10-year maximum time frame. He said between 5 to 10 years on why is the Vatican so heavily invested in the study of deep space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting that now, 10 years, that's hit a deadline now in my mind. 10 years, 1997, here we are at 2007. And I don't know, is it a coincidence that this year, for the first time, the anniversary of Malachi's comments to you, that now the Vatican for the first time is talking about maybe defunding VAT? When I read that first story, I thought, well, is that because they know whatever it was they needed to know? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into that. But I think it's ironic that now we're discovering second Earths, or admitting them, and Vatican astronomers are publishing treatises letting the faithful know that E.T. would not be a challenge to their faith. And now, something that I'm certain Father Malachi would be very interested in, or at least find extraordinary, is that we now have this science for cross-blending species that's not only reminiscent of what the Watchers were doing with the Nephilim, but it might be comparable to what other dimensional beings we call aliens.
Do you see anything at all good coming out of genetic modification?
Yeah, I do.
Like what?
Well, I mean, the funny thing was, a couple of years ago, I said to somebody, let's say, for instance, that I have a cancerous tumor, and if genetic modification or nanotechnology or any of these biotechnological advances in science, if they came up with a way for me to be able to go in and let them extract a little bit of that the cell matter from that DNA from that tumor out of my body, and then they create some kind of concoction and inject it back into that tumor.
They're already doing that, Tom.
Yeah, and I read a news story just this week where now through nanotechnology they're talking about the very possibilities of creating microscopic type micro robots, for want of a better word, that will be doing that very same thing. So I definitely think that there will be some benefits that come out of this technology, certainly.
Mm-hmm. You say that you could accept extraterrestrials within your worldview, and I can understand that. But again, if the evidence, Tom, begins to point to the fact that these are those who created us or took whatever was on Earth at that time and made us what we are now, could you accept that?
No. Well, I
think you said no.
Yeah.
Right? Well, but that's got to be a possibility. That's got to be in your mind a concern and a worry. Because an awful lot of what you said went on in ancient times might point to that. A lot of what's going on in current times, then, in your own mind, must also sort of point to that in a strange way.
I'm not sure that I understand the question, but I asked Mike Heiser's a friend of mine. I asked him one time about, did he buy the idea that you could cleanly define what's happening with alien intelligence as angelological and demonological. And he offered me a third hypothesis, which I later called Heiser's lion. It's actually in my new book. And that is that there could be this unknown intelligence that's outside of the need for redemption. And what was interesting to me about that theory was he said, you ascribe malevolence to what's happening in alien abduction. And it's because these people are treated in a way that is against their will, and their life is interrupted. Mm-hmm. And I've sat down and I've talked to my sister, and I know the incredible fear that is associated with this event.
Mm-hmm. Most Christians, most devout fundamentalist Christians, would very quickly say that what happened to your sister was an encounter with demons, and leave it at that.
Yeah, well, that's what.
But you're wandering beyond that. You're wondering beyond that, and quite clearly, you're flirting with the possibility that it is something else entirely that most Christians would dismiss as demons.
Well, even Keel and Vallée and other people have said that sometimes the behavior of these unknowns seems to be the same as what was defined by the early church as demonological.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that Keel or Vallée would say they are demons. Not in the traditional, church.
No, they wouldn't.
But the fact that you have a life that is interrupted by an activity that's not invited, and in our limited human understanding, we need to try to have some kind of packaged worldview that we live in that can interpret these events for us, and therefore angels, demons, whatever. But Heiser's Lion says, what if there's something entirely outside of that worldview? In other words, you walk out, if you're in Africa and you walk out in the middle of the field and you're dumb enough to come charging up to some lion and it eats you, you would not say it was malevolent. And the lion doesn't need redemption. The lion just does what it does.
Right.
It's not evil. So that there could be something outside of our understanding of creation that also behaves in a way that is incredibly intelligent, that may study us. But the things that it does and what it does and how it behaves can't be easily defined within orthodoxy as being either good or evil. Maybe it's something that falls entirely outside of that whole mentality of redemption. So, and now, whether I know, how could I possibly know? I don't know. All I know...
It doesn't sound as though you're saying you know, but it does sound as though you're beginning to seriously wonder, and that's good. All right, Tom, hold it right there. We're at a break point. We're going to come back and open the lines for Tom Horn. I'm Art Bell. Here I am. I'm going to turn it over to the audience now. That's wrong. Tom Horn, over to the audience. And if I were to render my opinion, I'd say Tom is kind of a good fundamentalist Christian who's had experiences within his own family, deep, profound experiences that have him questioning what's going on in our world. All these things we're seeing in our skies, all these stories of abduction and apparent alien contact and all the rest of it. And as Tom put it, he's beginning to try to connect the dots, and some of the dots may be going in directions that he might have a problem with. Now, with regard to his own theology. So that's just me, and I could be all wrong about that. We'll see what the audience has to say. That means all of you in a moment. Well, all right, Tom, I'd kind of like to go to the audience now and see what they have to say. What do you think?
Sure, fine.
All right, let's do it. Larry in Oregon, you're on with Tom Horn.
Hey, Tom.
Yes.
Larry, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Art, I finally got through to you.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, I wanted to talk to you. You mentioned something about the Stargate and possibly one of the reasons why we're in Iraq. I think it is to look for the Stargate. And the question I have basically is that any possibility that the Stargate that we're looking for could be the Ark of the Covenant?
Well, personally, I mean, I wouldn't know, but I do think that the explanations that we've been given so far, in my opinion, don't hold water.
Well, I think almost all of us agree on that, Tom.
Yeah,
the question was, though, could it be the Ark of the Covenant, or could it be something?
It's possible. I think we went there for something, and it could be that we had intelligence that told us that there were things in specific areas. It was interesting that all of the pre-invasion press all had to do with how we were going to go there. Not only would we be accepted with open arms, but we were going to make sure that infrastructure was taken care of. We were going to take care of the Iraqis.
Sure.
We went there and went directly to the most ancient sites, set up our heliports, started grabbing everything we could get our hands on, including out of the museums.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we had it. Now, whether there was, whether the Ark of the Covenant was part of that is certainly not something that I have any information about. But when you look at the history behind the Tower of Babel and specific prophecies about, and here's the thing, whether I would even agree with that theology or any of the listeners or Art or anybody else, doesn't matter as much as whether those who are in power, some belief system that drove them to go there to try to attain or ascertain certain things. And
well, frankly, with some of the reasons we were given for the reason why we went into Iraq, what you're offering as a possibility is as good as anything they offered and still holds up, whereas what they offered does not. Harry, in Texas, you're on with Tom Horn.
Thank you. This is Harry. I'm calling from South Texas. And I'd like to present a hypothesis to you and see what your comments on it would be. When you speak of an entity coming here and being outside the realm of what, I think you said salvation, I have a theory that there are many gods, okay? We acknowledge one God, and that's what it says in the Bible, but the Bible also, he never refers to himself singular. And I believe in each not solar system, but in galaxies far away, the energy that our God utilized here, whatever that might be, created us, and that there exists in other galaxies creatures or existence of beings that were created by other entities, similar to God, but not with God's goodness. And I think that would explain somewhat what you're getting at of being outside the realm of our salvation. Am I correct in that?
Well, Art,
I guess I'm asking you, do you feel like there could be other entities like God in other galaxies far away that our God did not create?
You're asking me that?
Well, I'm just asking you, gentlemen. You seem to be speaking of what's visiting us, and I am a Christian and a man of God, and I'll tell you, I have no problem believing that there's visitors because God is an alien. God and all of it, and Jesus was an alien by definition. I mean, that's not hard to understand. So I'm not threatened at all that an entity is coming from somewhere else and could be part of our Creator.
Well, the only threatening thing to you, Tom, would be if one of those dots you connect begins to show that these beings, whoever they turn out to be, and I wouldn't claim to know, turn out to be our progenitors, our creators, then everything gets turned upside down, and you're in a lot of trouble, and a lot of Christians, a lot of people all over the world, not just Christians, are in a lot of trouble.
Actually, I'm very comfortable, Art. I mean, I don't question my personal theology, and the reason I don't is because I'm not as fundamentalist as I might come across. I accepted a long time ago that, for instance, alien abduction phenomenon is a real phenomenon.
Oh yes, but you're traveling down a path that
everybody's traveling down a path, but what I'm saying is it doesn't challenge. I have a personal, each one of us have a sense of spirituality. We have a personal relationship with our God, and I don't, and that relationship is not challenged at all by this phenomenon. This phenomenon is something to me that is real, and it's outside of that relationship. It doesn't even have anything to do with the relationship. It's almost a separate issue where I'm trying to understand what this phenomenon is. Now, I'm very thankful that it didn't touch me personally, as far as I know.
Tom, maybe you're classifying it as a separate phenomenon so that you can deal with it.
Oh, well, hey, look, possible. What I'm saying is that it has never caused me to question my own personal faith, but my faith would probably not line up with the way you may be reading me either. In that I'm very open to accepting that there could be a multiplicity of realities, different kinds of intelligences that interact with us in different ways. It isn't all just God, devil, angel, demon. There could be other reality, and so those things don't challenge me because I don't try to use them to measure my belief system. I just try to think, okay, there is something here that has been occurring since the beginning of time. Mm-hmm. It's been recorded in the mythos of every great civilization that had an ability to write records. And that reality has an interest in involving itself with human DNA and animal DNA, and often uses that to express itself in three-dimensional reality. So for me, that is a reality. That really happens. Now, what is that? I don't necessarily say that's angels and demons. I'm just saying that's something that does actually occur. And it is a phenomenon that is as much a part of our American history as the fact that Abraham Lincoln existed.
Mm-hmm. All right. To Grover in Alaska, you're on with Tom Horn.
Thanks for having me on, Art.
Sure.
Quickly, I'd like to give a shout-out to my parents and all the boys over at the Drug Rehabilitation Center who are listening to this program. And Mr. Horn, thanks for coming on Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. I know your topic is fascinating, and you also share the same last name as one of my favorite NFL wide receivers, Joe Horn, formerly of the New Orleans Saints. But you were talking about animal modification. Have you heard of the Bohemian Grove?
Yes.
Yes, I know every year a mock human sacrifice is done there to Moloch, and I believe David Icke believes that the world leaders that gather into the Bohemian Grove turn into reptiles or reptilians in the Bohemian Grove. It kind of relates to, I guess you could say, the animal modification topic you were talking about, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Well, I mean, I know that Alex Jones, David Icke, these are people who have, they've looked deeper into what happens at the Bohemian Grove than I have, and I know that there is an occultic event, the worship of this big owl, the songs that they sing together. You have the elite that are gathered there. Now, as far as the animal side of biotechnology and my interest in it, and the reason why I think that it is both prophetic and that it should be something that most people are interested in. For instance, animals can do things we can't do. They sense things we can't sense. They can sense earthquakes. They smell tumors. Some of them, like dogs, can hear sounds as high as 40,000 hertz. Dolphins can hear 100,000 hertz. But more importantly, animals see wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum that are beyond our human ability. Mm-hmm. And I have a suspicion that as our understanding of quantum physics, including light and dark matter, expand, we're going to come to more fully appreciate these ancient references to beings of light and beings of darkness. And the reason why, even in the Bible, it talks about animals having this ability to see these beings that we can't see. The story of Balaam's donkey, and the angel is going to take off Balaam's head. And Balaam,
you believe we're headed toward an imminent post-human future, right?
I do believe that. We most certainly are. I guarantee you we are. Now, I may sound like a fruitcake saying that. I absolutely guarantee you that this is the last generation of the human species as the sole higher intelligent occupiers of planet Earth. I guarantee it.
Well, then I'm proud to have been part of it. Hannah in South Dakota, you're on with Tom Horn.
Hi. I have to say this is one of the best shows you've done in a long time. But I have two things I want to say. One is I'm Jewish, and there is a commandment that God gives us in Deuteronomy. I know you don't want us to bring up the biblical stuff, but he mentions the use of or mixing linen with cotton, and it's called shotness. And I wonder if that is God tells us not to mix cotton and linen, wool and linen together because, we're just not supposed to do it. And I wonder if that's indirect warning of us not, to not do animal, mixing of animal and human DNA. It's just a thought I wanted to throw out.
And it's very appropriate. In fact, some of the Jewish rabbis are actually more at the forefront of the discussions of both the ethics and what the ramifications of cross-species breeding will be. And you go to Google and whatever, and Google the name of the article, "Does a clone have a soul?" Does a clone have a soul? But what you'll find in that article is how these different leading rabbis in Israel are talking about these creatures that are born through genetic duplication, and they start asking these questions that are important to them about, would it be considered a human, a genetic modified human, part animal, part human? Would it be a human? And they even go so far as asking the question, if it's not a human, could we offer it as a ritual sacrifice? So it exposes these deep ethical questions that are important to different people. And it also exposes the issues that are raised by this whole question of breaching the species barriers. Now, for me, the bigger questions have to do with what plagues we could potentially unleash upon ourselves by how this affects the environment. And what we're already seeing in genetically modified crops is that when you start mixing living organisms in ways that neither creation, but if you don't believe in any of that, nor evolution allowed for, that it does things that can't be predicted. And so those are the biggest issues that I have. But go and look up that article, "Does a Clone Have a Soul?" And there's some great questions in there from the Jewish perspective about what is a human.
All right. Jason in California, your turn with Tom Horn.
Thank you, Art. I wanted to ask Tom, is there an association between autoimmune disease and alien abduction?
What was the question?
Yeah, I was wondering if there's a relationship between autoimmune disease and alien abduction.
Autoimmune disease, the body beginning to attack itself.
I'm like I said earlier on this program, I'm neither a scientist, I'm not a doctor, a medical doctor. There are so many questions like that I just simply don't have an answer for. I only know that both from life experience and also from research, I know, at least in my mind, that whatever these things are, they have an interest in blood, human DNA, genetics, and not always, but at least in some cases, the purposes behind that are the harvesting of cellular matter for the purposes of creating offspring. Mm-hmm. And so then it comes to, the different scholars in this field talk about, well, is this because we're looking at a very old, super intelligent existence that has reached the end of their ability to be able to procreate, to progenerate themselves. And so they need to harvest this material so they can create offspring. So there's all kinds of different theories, and how would I possibly know which one is correct? But
well, when you don't know the answer to a question, just better to say you don't know. Cherry in Wisconsin, you're on with Tom Horn.
Hi, Tom. I want to refer you back to that experience, I guess, your sister had with an encounter with some other life intelligence, or intelligent life, rather. You mentioned that she was terrified by it, but did she have recurring encounters? And if she had, she must have developed an opinion about what these creatures wanted from her or were going to do with her, and I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Okay, did the encounters recur, Tom?
Yes.
They did. And what did she eventually think that this was all about and they wanted?
What does she think?
That's right.
I don't think she's ever drawn a conclusion. I think she wishes it wouldn't happen ever, period. It scares her.
Is it still going on?
3 months ago was the last time.
Oh, my God.
Now, let me tell you about this experience very quickly. 3 months ago, I get a phone call. They think she's had a stroke. She's lost all the feeling in her legs. They take her in the hospital. They're doing both neurological and other kinds of tests. They determine she hasn't had a stroke. They don't even know what's happened to her, but they put her through a series of they help her learn to re-walk again because she had lost all the feeling in her legs. Now, I did not know until early this week when I talked with her that what the whole story was that 3 months ago she's laying there in bed. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning or something, late at night, and her bed started shaking. And immediately in her mind she says, they're here. She knows that they're there. And what she said, what was like an instant passed, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning. And she's on the edge of the bed. Now her legs are off the edge of the bed as if she had been sitting up on the bed, and then leaned back.
Right.
The blankets are folded up beside her. And she goes to stand up and can't stand up. Something's wrong with her legs. And she calls my mother, and my mother comes in and is trying to help her stand up. She can't stand up. Her legs won't work. She doesn't have any feeling in them. She can't.
All right, Tom, hold it right there. We're at a break point. We have to break here. Tom Horn is my guest. I can certainly understand how what he's explaining right now would have caused a lot of deep thought about what he believes. I'm Art Bell. All of this is becoming much more clear to me now as the tragedy of what occurred to, and is occurring to, Tom Horn's sister is becoming clear. We'll get more of it in a moment. All right, Tom, to finish up with your sister, your mom got there. I take it, what from there?
She sat up in the bed, tried to get up, couldn't, and started, crying out. My mother, my sister lives with my mother now, and my mother came to her, tried to help her stand up and couldn't. She called the ambulance, and the ambulance came. When the ambulance got there, they actually told her she had had a stroke. That's what they thought.
Sure.
And they took her to the hospital, and that's when the neurologist and the other people got involved, and they determined she had not had a stroke. When I talked to her just a few days ago, she's walking again now. She had to go through 12 weeks of therapy where they used a device that helps her stand up, a cradle or whatever, and she eventually has gotten enough feeling back in her legs that she can walk again. But the point is that they don't know yet what happened to her. It wasn't a stroke. And if you knew the history of from my dad to then what happened with my sister to what then began happening with her daughter, which is in its own right is mathematically it's improbable. It's almost like living in the Matrix. It's almost like watching a movie play out that nobody could have these kind of events occur that weren't written into a script, and yet they did occur. They have occurred. And now the same activity is happening with her daughter. So now you have 3 generations of women who are having this same experience, and it's very classical. I mean,
as you know, in the abduction world, this is not at all uncommon, Tom.
No, I didn't know that at one time. There was a point, actually, at which I went to pastoral counsel and said, I really got to know what's going on here. Yeah. And luckily, I was able to get connected with somebody who was a strong person of faith, but who also had experience in this kind of phenomenon, and they explained to me this is a generational abduction phenomenon which is occurring. And they were some of the people that we finally wound up not just with testimony, which could be fabricated, but photos that can't be explained. Those are on the official disclosure.com website, even audio recordings.
Okay, some people have had difficulty in finding these things you've been talking about. Where are they?
Officialdisclosure.com.
And when you get there?
Right on the front page.
On the front page.
Right on the front page.
All right. Then I guess they're just not looking hard enough. Donna in Kentucky, you're on the air with Tom Horn.
Good morning, Mr. Horn, Mr. Bell. Oh, my stomach is wanting to knot up. I'm sorry. I have to get this question out. I have experienced some bizarre things and seen the most bizarre, unusual things in the recent past on this good old United States. And my question, I really have two, but this one's more important to me. This king that's over these creatures, who's an angel of the bottomless pit, I'm thinking that this Hebrew tongue, Abaddon, that he is also the star that fell, but I'm not sure. But can you tell me anything about him? Because this man walked up to me. Oh, this man walked up to me, and he said he was that name, and he was Hebrew, and he said a few other things, and I, just really didn't talk to him. I did say a couple words, but it was too creepy. And I didn't know this was in the book yet, but it was too creepy what was going on around me, because these spiritual beings were interceding and helping me at this point where this person walked up to me. He seemed like such a nice man. And I just want also to know, are these like giants, or any of these people looking for a woman with sixes on her body? And now...
Okay, Donna, you've got a lot out already.
The most bizarre things. You must think I'm a fruitcake. Okay.
No, hold it right there. Tom, you want to respond?
I.D.E, Apollyon, the Apostle Paul in the New Testament talks about the Antichrist as being the son of perdition, and in the Greek there, perdition is Apolleia, the son of Apollyon, so that there are those who believe that part of what's going on with this whole need to use material, and even, by the way, the transhumanist approach to it, that transhumanism might even lead to this genetic concoction which would give birth to the Apollyon. Essentially, it's a redo of the Nephilim. The Watchers come down, they use animal and human DNA, they create something, they incarnate themselves in it. That modern man, in his quest to play God, according to the theory, starts breaching the species barrier, and that there is intelligence there that uses this incarnation of human, animal, whatever, and this demonic force then can incarnate itself into that new creation, the son of perdition, Apollyon. So I'm assuming that's what she's talking about.
So we are the last of the modern untampered with.
Yeah, well, and it could have, there are theories that it could have happened once before. That by the time we reach Noah, he's the last guy alive whose DNA has not been corrupted by intermarriage, leading back to the Gibborim and the Nephilim and the Watchers. Whether that happened or not, I'm not sure. I couldn't possibly know. How could I know? But it's a theory. But what I do know is that everybody should be concerned about what's happening in biotechnology now. I mean, there are some very good things that could come out of biotech. But on the other hand, when you start unnaturally altering living organisms, these could affect the environment in ways that we're not prepared.
I have exactly the same concerns. John in Denver, you're on with Tom Horn.
Yeah, I've been listening to your show and then George's since the 80s. And one of the topics that really is not fully addressed is an understanding of the origin, the etymology of the word demon and demonology. It goes back to a root that deals with the word genius. And first off, you have got to understand when somebody does an exorcism, they are dealing with the soul of a disembodied being that was playing around with humanity before the Great Flood. So you've got two realms of demonology. You've also got, God says in Psalms that he stands in the congregation of the mighty and he judges among the gods. So it's clear that there's other beings that are there that have power more than we do, but nevertheless, there's one God that judges among them. Now, the other issue that I heard you talking about is the origins on genetics. It was Dr. Fred Hoyle that pointed out something here, and this is something everybody needs to think about, is that, you can do 10 to the 22nd represents all the suns and all the universes. Now, if you take the number 10 to 120th power, that represents all the singular electrons piled on each other. Now, what Fred Hoyle did was he and his associate, they went around to all the other realms of science, and they had them figure out the odds for a spontaneous creation of a bacterium. Now, that turned out to be 10 to the 40,000th power. That's how complex even a simple bacterium is. You don't get 10 to the 40,000th power by chance. That's more than the electrons piled on each other for the entire universe. Now, people need to think about that. And the other thing that's going on is that it makes it clear in Isaiah that it says God is going to judge the host of heaven that is on high and the rulers of the earth. And so he categorizes into two general categories. So we know that there's one class that's non-terrestrial that he's going to judge, as well as the rulers of the earth for departing from him. And I just thought that needed some clarification. The Arab word, and by the way, the Arabs see a lot of UFOs just like other people around the world, but they've always called them the jinn, which is a derivative or an etymology where we get the word genius from. And the phenomena is worldwide, and people have got to recognize that the answers are throughout the entire Bible. And I haven't been aware that anybody thoroughly has explained that. So when you're talking about demonology, you're talking about geniuses, and one half of those geniuses were disembodied, and the other half are still running around trying to deceive and work on people and do things they had no business doing. They don't belong in this realm, but they have set up house here.
All right, John. Well, clearly the numbers you gave go to creation. I have no argument with that. Just a great wonderment about how it all happened. And I think that's what Tom is struggling with. Let's go to Abe in Lexington, Kentucky.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
It's an honor to speak to both of you. Mr. Horn, I was just wondering if you might have anything to say about the escalating battles that are going on in the Gaza Strip. I know that somewhere in the Old Testament it states that the city of Gaza was actually created by the sons of Anak, or the Rephaim, and I was just wondering if you might have anything to say about that.
Well, it's certainly not my expertise. I mean, no other city except Jerusalem is given as much mention in the Bible as Babylon, and therefore that's the reason why I tend to focus, if I'm going to look at biblical eschatology, and especially with my interest in Stargate technology, I tend to stay more focused on Iraq. But I understand what you're saying, and I do know that Israel is going to be a boiling pot, according to biblical prophecy in these last days, and I think that Gaza is part of that.
Okay. Lauren in Salt Lake City, you're on with Tom Horn.
Hey, Tom. This is thanks a lot for having me on. Mr. Horn, I had a question for you about ChipRx, and I was wondering if you knew anything about their product called Smart Pill.
What is it?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, Lauren again. Some product called Smart Pill. What is that?
Smart Pill. It's ChipRx is putting out this product called Smart Pill that's being developed in the University of Kentucky. It's a implantable device, and I have my medical terms I can't find right now, but it's actually only the size of a wooden matchstick, and you can look under ChipRx under their products and see this. And the deal is it's got a reservoir and a chip, what's it called, a circuitry control unit and batteries, and you just implant it through a needle. And you can put it inside someone's body, and you can attach a catheter to it, and then they can, say, attach it to your spine or something like this.
And it does what?
And then they can remotely activate it to inject you with something. And I was wondering if you knew anything about, detecting it, because it's so small. See, the circuitry is only, say, as big as a third of a wooden matchstick.
So the idea is to what? Inject medicine when needed, that sort of thing?
Well, that's what they say it's for. But the problem being is if they're medically testing it when they're not supposed to on someone, say, that they took inside their Barcelona hospital and off a street in Barcelona, which they did, which happened.
Okay, all right. Well, have you heard anything about that, Tom?
Well, no, it doesn't necessarily surprise me. I mean, the RFID technology, there's news this week about what's happening with digital angels and Alzheimer's patients, and certainly this is going to be part of our future, whether we like it or not. And there are those people who fear that this could ultimately lead to something like the mark of the beast.
I suppose it's beginning to sound a little that way. Michael in Norfolk, Virginia, you're on with Tom Horn.
Yes, thank you. Tom, I'm going to agree or assume that your thesis is correct, that a Stargate is created by the introduction of transhumans. Now, with that being the case, I'm going to suggest two things. You mentioned, before I get to those suggestions, you mentioned early in this discussion the name of Jeffrey Smith, who was on last night with Ian Punnett. Now, he was talking about genetically modified foods, and he was giving us information which suggests that people who eat them are actually having their gene structure transformed. In other words, they are becoming transhumans, which, according to your theory, would make them susceptible to these extraterrestrial, demonic, extra-dimensional, whatever you want to call them, forces. Now, here are my two suggestions. Setting aside everything that happens on Coast to Coast that's controversial, from your standpoint as a man who was a pastor and who has a doctorate in divinity, from your standpoint, you have an obligation to come on this show, setting aside the controversial, and advocate that there be a coast-to-coast AM discussion group in every Christian church in America. Because just as Richard C. Hoagland said last week on this program, this time of night is when the brightest people in the world are awake, the brightest people in America, and certainly the brightest people in Christian America. So why aren't they doing what the Scriptures themselves says, that they should be watchmen in the midnight preparing to tell the people? Forget about the controversy that comes on Coast to Coast. What about the good stuff that comes on here, the necessary, vital information? And why aren't you advocating the formation of these kinds of clubs in every church?
Well, you are, Michael. I don't know. You want to advocate that, Tom?
Well, I've been advocating, and I appreciate everything he has said. I've been advocating the interest of people to pay attention to these issues for more than 10 years. It's why I've written 2 books about it. It's why I've been reporting on it, as well as has Jeffrey Smith. It's why I interviewed Jeffrey Smith on some other radio programs to talk about what might the impact on our environment be. There's not just a potential spiritual quality to this. There could be a very practical environmental quality to this. And I'll tell you what, I hope that in the end we don't learn what I call the Brundlefly lesson. You think about that old film, the movie The Fly.
Yes.
Seth Brundle, who's conducting these teleportation experiments, he accidentally has his DNA combined with a common housefly during a teleportation experiment.
That's right. All right, Tom, we've got to stop here. Your book is Nephilim, Stargates, the year 2012, and the Return of the Watchers, and that's the exit point for us, my friend. Tom, thank you for being on the program.
Art, thank you for having me on.
Good night, my friend. All right, everybody, that's it for this weekend. I'll be interested in the emails to see what you took away from this program. In the meantime, everybody have a good week ahead. And here in the Bell household, we're hoping we make it through to June 1st. Good night.